Sioux warrior's testimony unveils surprising details of Custer's last stand. Black Elk, also known as Custer, was just 13 years old when he took part in the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876. As a young Sioux boy, he bravely scalped a soldier during the battle, witnessing firsthand the bravery and chaos that unfolded. Black Elk was the second cousin of the renowned Crazy Horse, who played a significant role in the battle, giving him a unique perspective on the events. He observed the intensity of the fighting as the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors stood against the 7th Cavalry Regiment, led by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer. Black Elk's eyewitness account offers valuable insights into one of the most crucial moments in American history. But before we dive into his story, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to help support our community. No white man survived the skirmish with Custer, a battle that ended swiftly under the broad daylight. Crazy Horse, our steadfast leader, had already defeated General Crook's forces on the Rosebud that day. He could have wiped out the soldiers entirely if he had called upon more warriors from our villages to set an ambush at dawn as they camped in the dark. After their defeat, he had previously driven back the cavalry that attacked our village on the Powder River during a freezing March morning in the moon of the snowblind. From there he moved west to the Rosebud, where he repelled the soldiers who came to attack us, and finally to the Valley of the Greasy Grass, our ancestral homeland, where we sought only to be left in peace. 2 days before the battle, we set up camp in the valley, along the south side of the Greasy Grass, just before the sun reached its peak. Our village was vast, with countless teepees stretching out across the land. Upstream to the south were the Hunkpapa, followed by the Egleys, the Sanarks, the Blackfeet, and the Shahil, with the Sandus and Yanktonai farthest to the north. To the east the Greasy Grass flowed, swollen with snow melt from the Bighorn Mountains, with timber lining its banks. From a hill one could see the mountains to the south, and west hills and bluffs rose across the river, with gullies cutting through the cliffs. To the west were lower hills, where we grazed and guarded our ponies, which were too many to count. A warrior named Rattling Hawk had been shot in the hip during the battle on the Rosebud, but was healed by a medicine man named Harry Chin. The day before the battle, I had anointed myself and was about to swim with some boys when Harry Chin called me to Rattling Hawk's teepee. Needing my help, 5 other boys were already there, and he needed us to take on the guise of bears in the curing ceremony, as his power came from a dream of the bear. He painted my body and face yellow with black stripes on either side of my nose, tied my hair to look like bear ears, and adorned my head with eagle feathers. As he did this, I remembered my vision and felt suddenly lifted off the ground. In that moment I understood more than I could express, and felt certain that some great misfortune was coming our way. I was filled with dread. The other boys were painted entirely in red, with real bear ears on their heads. Harry Chin, dressed in a real bear hide, began singing at the doorway. The sacred herbs are rejoicing. 2 women entered, standing on either side of the injured warrior, one holding a cup of water, the other holding some kind of herb. As I looked at the cup, I tried to see if it contained the entire sky, as it had in my vision, but I couldn't tell. As the plant and cup were offered to Rattling Hawk, Harry Chin continued to chant. Then they gave him a red cane, and he stood up immediately. The injured warrior, leaning on the sacred red stick, followed the women out of the teepee. We boys, pretending to be little bears, danced around him, growling as we did so. Feathers of different colors stuck out from our mouths as we performed the ritual. Then Harry Chin came out on all fours, looking very much like a bear to me. Rattling Hawk's walking improved, and though he couldn't fight the next day, he recovered soon after. We boys went swimming to wash off the paint from our bodies. After the ceremony, when we returned, the villagers were dancing and telling stories of bravery from the battle with 3 stars on the Rosebud. We were tasked with bringing the ponies closer to the village as dusk approached. By the time we finished, night had fallen, and the villagers continued to dance around fires, their celebrations unending. We wandered from one dance to another, until we could no longer stay awake. At dawn, my father woke me, telling me to help him graze our horses. As we did, He warned me to put a long rope on one of the horses, so we could easily catch it and secure the others. He stressed the importance of being watchful, urging me to keep an eye on the camp and return the horses quickly if trouble arose. Several of us boys tended to our horses together until the sun reached its peak, and the heat became unbearable. We decided to cool off in the water, and my cousin offered to stay with the horses until we returned. As I anointed myself with grease, I felt a strange sense of unease, as if something terrible was about to happen. Despite this feeling, I went with the boys to the water's edge. To the west of the village, many people were digging turnips and many others were already in the water. By the time my cousin brought the horses down to drink, we had been in the water for a while. The heat being intense, suddenly, the crier's voice rang out from the nearby Hunkpapa camp, "The chargers are coming, they are charging." The cries echoed from camp to camp, all the way to the Santas and Yent. The Ogla crier repeated the same lines, his voice growing more urgent. Everyone rushed to secure their horses, and we were lucky to have ours nearby. My older brother, mounted on a sorrow horse, rode quickly toward the Hunkpapas. I had a buckskin horse. When my father heard my brother's cry and saw him riding toward the Hunkpapas without his pistol, he ran over, telling me to take it from him and return it. Then come back to me quickly. He also had my six-shooter, an heirloom from my aunt. I grabbed the guns, mounted my pony and went after my brother. Just beyond the Hunkpapa camp, a thick cloud of dust rose as the many still wet from the river, ran about in confusion. Out of the dust came the soldiers on their tall, powerful horses firing their weapons. My brother, with his revolver in hand, yelled at me to turn back. There was a patch of brushy timber, just beyond the Hunkpapas, where some warriors were gathering. He headed there and I followed. Women and children were already fleeing downstream, in large numbers looking back. I saw them all scrambling up a hillside when we reached the timber. Many Hunkpapas were already there, and the soldiers were firing above us, making leaves fall from the trees where bullets hit. The women and children were running. The warriors were riding in on their horses, and I couldn't tell what was happening in the village below. It was all dust, screaming, and thunder. In the woods and outside the Hunkpapa camp, we all shouted, "Be brave, don't be like a woman." The defenseless are panting heavily. I believe this was when Gold stepped in to stop the Hunkpapas from fleeing. I stayed in the woods for a while. Thinking about my vision, it gave me a sense of purpose, and I felt certain that the army would be defeated, and that my people were all thunder beings. Then a loud cry rose over the dust. "Crazy Horse is coming." The arrival of Crazy Horse was signaled by the sound of eagle bone whistles and the shouting of Hokahi. Like a howling wind from the north and west, the valley grew darker with dust and smoke, filled with shadows, cries, hoofbeats, and gunfire to my left. I could hear the soldiers' horses with their iron-shod hooves, retreating into the brush, with shooting breaking out everywhere. The horses eventually broke through the undergrowth, and I was surrounded by a whirlwind of activity, as men and horses moved in and out of the area, heading upstream while shouting, "Hurry! Move quickly!" We were all mixed together in the noise and darkness. As the troops ran upstream, I didn't see much, but I did witness a Lakota warrior charging at a soldier who stayed behind and fought bravely. The Lakota grabbed the soldier's horse by the bridle, but the soldier shot him with a revolver. Being small, I couldn't push through to where the soldiers were, so I didn't kill anyone. Everything was dark and confusing, and there were too many people in front of me. Soon the soldiers and many Lakotas were all packed into the river, and I was in the water for a while. Men and horses were tangled up and fighting in the river, making it seem like hail was falling. After we emerged from the water, people began stripping the dead soldiers of their clothes and wearing them. One soldier on the ground was still moving. A Lakota rode up and said to me, "Boy, get off and scalp him." I dismounted and began to scalp him. His hair was short and my knife was dull. He was grinding his teeth, so I shot him in the forehead and then took his scalp. Many of our warriors were chasing the soldiers up a hill on the other side of the river while everyone else was moving downstream. On a distant hill above the Santee camp, there was a large cloud of dust, with our warriors darting in and out of it like swallows, and many guns were firing. I decided to show my mother my scalp. So I rode toward the hill, where a group of women and children had gathered. On the way I saw a beautiful, young woman among a band of warriors, heading toward the battle. She sang out, "Brothers, our allies have arrived, be strong, be fearless." As I made my way through the Ogla camp, I caught sight of Rattling Hawk, sitting alone in his lodge, clutching a rifle. He was singing a sorrowful tune. "What can you do, brothers, that I cannot achieve?" When I reached the women on the hill, they were all singing and making a tremolo to uplift the warriors. Across the river, when my mother saw my first scalp, she made a special tremolo just for me. I stayed with my mother for a while, watching the dust clouds swirling on the hill. Across the river, horses emerged from the dust with empty saddles. After showing my scalp to my mother, I lingered with the women as they continued to tremolo and sing. The thick dust from the battle made it hard to see, but we knew the soldiers were being defeated. Many boys around my age, some even younger, were there with their mothers and sisters, and they asked me to join them in the battle. We mounted our ponies and set out. As we rode down toward the river, we saw gray horses with empty saddles. Plunging into the water, we reached the mouth of a gulch that led up into the bluff, where the fighting was happening, and crossed the greasy grass. By the time we arrived, most of the soldiers had fallen, many already dead, but some were still alive. More boys had gathered by then, and we rode around shooting arrows at the soldiers. I found one soldier writhing with arrows in him, and started to take his coat, but a man pushed me aside and claimed it for himself. Then I noticed something shiny, hanging from the soldier's belt. I pulled it out and found it was a round, bright yellow object that was very beautiful. I wore it around my neck like a necklace. At first it ticked, but then it stopped. I kept it around my neck for a long time before I figured out what it was, and how to make it tick. The women gathered around, and we climbed to the top of the hill. Their gray horses lay dead, some piled on top of soldiers and soldiers on top of horses. We didn't see many of our own dead, as they had already been collected, but many of our men were killed or injured. The dust from the battle made it difficult to see clearly, and it was hard to tell who was who. It didn't seem like anyone knew which soldier was and I didn't spot him. I did see one soldier raising his arms and groaning, so I shot an arrow into his forehead, making his arms and legs twitch. I noticed some locators trying to help another look. When I got closer, I realized it was Black Wazee, the brother of Chase in the morning. He had been shot through the right shoulder, with a bullet lodged in his left hip, as he was hanging off the side of his horse. When he was hit, they were giving him medicine. He was my cousin, and both his father and mine were so furious that they went and killed a soldier and mutilated his body. The soldier was corpulent and the meat looked tempting, but we didn't eat it. There was a young boy, younger than me, who asked me to scalp a soldier for him. I did, and he ran off to show the scalp to his mother. Most of the warriors drove the other soldiers back to the hill where their pack mules were while we were there. After a while, I grew tired of searching around. The smell of blood was overwhelming, and I became weary of it. So I headed back home with a few others. I wasn't sorry at all. I felt satisfied. The soldiers had come to harm our families and us, and this was our land. When I was in the brush with the Hunkpapas, and the first shots were fired, I had a feeling that this would happen. I believed my people were connected to the thunder beings in my vision, and that the soldiers were foolish to come here. Everyone stayed up all night in the village. The next morning, another war party went back to the hill where the soldiers were, and the men who had been watching there all night returned home. My mother and I went along. She rode a mare with a little colt trotting beside her. Following its mother, we could see the horses and pack mules up there, but the soldiers were well fortified. At the base of the hill, on the west side of the greasy grass, there were some mulberry bushes. A big boy named Roundful was running around the bushes. We asked him what he was doing, and he said, "There's a white man in that bush." And there was he had hidden there when the other soldiers retreated to the hilltop and had been there all night. We began shooting arrows at him, and it felt like chasing a rabbit. He crawled from one side of the bush to the other, while we ran around firing our bows at him. At one point he cried out, "Out!" After a while, we set fire to the grass around the bushes, and he emerged running. Some of our warriors killed him. When we climbed to the top of the hill where some of our men were stationed, we looked over. We couldn't see the soldiers lying in their defenses, but we could see the horses and pack mules, many of which were dead when we went back down and crossed the river again. Some soldiers fired at us, hitting the water. It was nearly dusk when my mother and I returned to the camp on swift horseback. By then, our scouts had reported that more soldiers were approaching up the stream, so we decided to break camp. Before dark, we were packed up and began heading up the greasy grass toward Woodlouse Creek in the Bighorn Mountains. We fled through the night following the greasy grass. My mother tossed some puppies into the pony drag that my 2 younger brothers and I rode in. They kept trying to crawl out, so I spent a lot of time putting them back, which meant I didn't get much sleep. We arrived at a small dry brook by daylight, made camp and feasted well. The meat had patches of fat in it, and I wish I had some of it right now. By midday we set off again and reached Woodlouse Creek, at the base of the mountains, where we made camp there. 3 bears, a man with grievous wounds, went into convulsions and kept repeating Jenny. Jenny, though I didn't understand what he meant. He eventually died, and we called that place the camp where Janine died. That evening, everyone became agitated and started shouting, "Well, soldiers are coming." I looked over and saw what seemed like troops coming our way, but it turned out to be some of our own men, dressed in soldiers' uniforms. They were just having some fun. The scouts reported that the soldiers hadn't followed us, and that everything was safe. Now throughout the camp there were large fires and killed dancers going on all night. I hope this first-hand account gives you a new perspective on the Battle of Little Bighorn and the Great Sioux War of 1876. Stay tuned for more videos like this. I hope to bring you more first-hand accounts of different battles. So have a great day, and I'll see you next time.